Hi everyone. So previously we learned how to create a directory using the make directory command. So mkdir and some directory name and then enter. And now if we list the contents of this command line course directory, we can see that we have the new directory here, some directory, and also the old one, weak one. Of course, you may also sometimes want to remove a directory, and we can do this using a command remove directory. That's rmdir. So rmdir some underscore directory. And I'm using tab completion here. And then enter. And if we check using ls, we can see that the directory is now gone. Often you also may want to copy a directory. So we use the cp command, the copy command, to copy a file, and we can try to do the same thing with a directory. So cp week1, and let's copy it into week1 underscore copy, and then hit enter. Well, unfortunately, we get this error message that week1 is a directory, so it is not copied. So in order to actually copy a directory, you need to use this option -R. So cp -R week1 underscore copy. So let's now check using ls. So list the contents again. And now we can see that we have the old week1 here, and then we also have week1 copy. And these now have exactly the same content. So if I check the content of week1 copy using ls week1 copy, and enter, I can see that it has a text file life of the b inside. So cp-r copies the entire directory and all of its files, and all of the subdirectories, and all of their files, and so on. So this can be potentially quite a lot. We may also want to remove an entire directory. Now that week1 and week1 copy are totally identical and we don't need 2 copies of lifeofb.txt, we may want to remove week1 copy. So let's try rmdir again, rmdir. So remove directory and week1 underscore copy. Well, rmdir actually will not remove a directory unless it is actually completely empty. So this one has the life of b.txt inside, so rmdir will not remove it. We can use the rm or remove command with the parameter r to remove this week1 copy directory. And now if we check, the directory is gone. So rmdir will only remove the directory if it's empty, but rm-r will actually remove the directory and everything that's contained inside it. Let's take a second look at the ls command. We learned last week that it lists the contents of a directory, but it can actually do more. So let me start by going back to my home directory, and there's a convenient way to do this. Regardless of where you are, cd without any arguments, so just plain cd, and enter will take you back to your home directory. Now if I execute ls space -l, L stands for long format, ls gives me much more output than before. In the rightmost column, we see the names of each file and directory. So here we see the name of the command line course directory. Then here we see when the contents of this directory were last modified. So the contents of the cmd line course were modified just a few minutes ago. And then we have the size of the file in bytes. So here we have the size of this video file, video2rehearsal.mov, in bytes. And we'll talk more about file sizes later. However, for now, it's sufficient to know that 1 byte represents a very small amount of data. So basically, it's just enough to store a very small number. A typical Gutenberg book would be maybe 200,000 or 300,000 bytes. And videos like this one can be hundreds of millions of bytes. If we add an option h to the ls command, so that would be ls space -lh, we can get a human readable format. And this one says the size of the video is 485 megabytes. That's 485 millions of bytes, roughly. That doesn't correspond exactly, but it's roughly 485 million bytes. The next two columns contain the owner name and the group name of files and directories. So, for example, this CMD line course is owned by user MP Silvey, which is me, and it belongs to the group staff. On a machine where there are several users, many users can belong to the same group. And then it can be convenient to limit certain files to just the users in that particular group. This is related to Unix file permissions, which are listed in the leftmost column here. These fields indicate who is allowed to view, edit, and execute a particular file or directory. The first 3 characters list the permissions for the owner. For example, the owner of this file or directory CMD line course, which is me, MP Silvey, is allowed to read the content of the directory because MP Silvey has read rights. MP Silvey is also allowed to write into the directory and modify its content because me or MP Silvey has write permissions. And finally, I'm also allowed to execute the directory, which means that I'm allowed to enter it. We'll talk more about execute rights later when we talk about scripts. So in addition to the owner, also the group can have read, write, and execute permissions, and that is signified by the next 3 characters here. For the CMD course directory, CMD line course directory, all staff members are allowed to look at the contents of the directory because they have read rights, and they're allowed to access the directory because they have execute rights. But they're not allowed to modify the contents of the directory since they do not have write permissions. So finally, we have permissions for all other users on the computer. So the users which are not me and which do not belong to this staff group. And those users are also allowed to read the contents of CMD line course, and they're allowed to access the directory, but they're not allowed to modify the contents. There's one more important thing that you need to know about the output of ls-l. The leftmost character tells you whether we're dealing with a directory or a regular file. So, for instance, for this CMD line course, the leftmost character is D, which means that this is a directory. Whereas for this video2 rehearsal, the leftmost character is a dash, which means that we're talking about a regular file. Okay, so you may wonder why the CMD line course directory is so small. Just 100 bytes, even though it actually contains an entire Gutenberg book, Life of the Bee. Well, there is a reason for this, and that is that ls doesn't actually show the total size of the contents of the directory, because directories in Unix are actually just files themselves, and they have a size which does not depend on the contents. this is the size that ls shows. However, there is a way to show the size of the contents of the directory, and you do that using the disk usage command, or du. So let's try it. So du space -sh cmd line course and enter. And that tells you that the grand total of the contents of the size of the contents of cmd line course is 348 kilobytes. The S option tells du that you want the grand total size of the directory, and H again tells du that you want a human readable output. Okay, file size can sometimes become a problem. So maybe you want to avoid running out of disk space, or maybe you want to transfer a large file over a network connection. In this case, it's possible to compress files so that they take less space. And there are a few different programs available for compression on most Unix systems. I'm going to talk about one of them called gzip. There's another one called tar, which you'll learn to use in the homework assignment. Gzip stands for GNU zip. GNU, or GNU, is the name of the software project that developed this particular program, and zip comes from the inventors of the compression algorithm, Ziv and Lempel. In any case, let's go into the cmd line course directory and week 1. Enter. So let's look at the size of this lifeofb.txt book, ls-lh and lifeofb.txt, enter. And it is approximately 344 kilobytes. So let's now compress this file. gzip space lifeofb. I'm using tab completion again, and then enter. Now, if we run ls-l h, we can see that the result is now substantially smaller, 133 kilobytes. So that's only a little bit over a third of the original size. And the compressed ratio, which is the relation between the size of the original and compressed file, really depends on the contents of the file. So it can sometimes be bigger, sometimes be smaller. But for a book, maybe this 1/3 is a pretty typical ratio. So the resulting file is no longer a text file. It is in a very compact binary encoding. We can look at it using the command less. So less lifeofb.txt.gz and enter. So less will ask us if we actually want to look at it because this is a binary file, and we can answer yes. So just Y. And as we can see, it looks like total gibberish, unintelligible. So let's quit less using Q. We can recover the original file using the gunzip command. So gunzip lifeofb.txt.gz and then enter. And now if we check, we have the life of b here again, and if we look at it using less life of b, we see something familiar, and Q quits less. So this was a deeper look at files and directories in Unix. Hope you enjoyed it.